Behind the Curtain. Part 2. Days passed, and Ethan's career rebounded. His acting offers began to increase. The title of mastermind for Sarah also began to circulate in a small circle. But as Ethan's fame returned, Brenda's obstructions became more frequent and obvious. Script supervisor Sarah, are you too idle lately? The props team is short-staffed. You should go help out there. Brenda deliberately reassigned Sarah away from Ethan, making her do the hardest and dirtiest jobs. Mr. Black's scripts will be passed on by me directly from now on. You don't need to ask about them. Brenda even cut off Sarah's professional contact with Ethan. The rumors also grew more intense. Someone anonymously exposed on social media, accusing Ethan of having an inappropriate relationship with a certain little script supervisor from a film set, implying that Sarah had used her body to get ahead. Although no names were mentioned, the gossip on set pointed directly at Sarah. In an instant, malicious terms like scheming script supervisor and slut who slept her way to the top were hurled at Sarah like a torrent of dirty water. Sarah saw the malice behind those comments, the foul-smelling jealousy and contempt. Women like her should get out of the entertainment industry. Her heart ached as if it were being cut by a knife. She knew none of it was true, but she had no way to defend herself. She hoped Ethan would stand up and clarify things for her. They had such deep understanding and shared such intimate moments. But Ethan? He fell silent. Ethan, those news reports. Sarah gathered her courage to find him. She saw the struggle and hesitation in his eyes. Ethan waved his hand irritably. Sarah, I can't come forward right now. Things are too hot. You know, he didn't finish, but Sarah had already seen his true thoughts. I can't risk it for her. My career has just started to pick up. I can't be tied to another scandal. In that moment, Sarah felt a bone-deep coldness. What hurt her more than being called a slut was being betrayed by the person she trusted. She felt all the strength drain from her body, and she stumbled. She looked at Ethan, the man she had tried so hard to help and understand, who was now abandoning her for his own status and future. So, Ethan, you mean, I should handle this myself, is that right? Her voice was very soft, but it carried an indescribable disappointment. Ethan avoided her gaze and just said, Sarah, you should take a break. Come back when things have calmed down. Take a break. Sarah gave a bitter smile. She knew this so-called break was just a polite way of telling her to leave. That day, Sarah packed her things and left Ethan's team. When she walked out of the film set, the sunlight was blinding but couldn't reach the darkness in her heart. She felt like she was back where she started, a speck of dust that could be blown away by the wind. Only this time, she was not just dust, but dust stained with mud. She returned to her rented apartment, facing the city lights outside her window, feeling a loneliness and despair she had never known. She had thought her ability would allow her to break free from her fate, but now it seemed it had only made her see more ugliness and feel deeper betrayal. After Sarah left, Ethan felt a brief sense of relief. There was no more pressure from Brenda and no more ambiguous entanglements. But soon, that sense of relief was replaced by a huge emptiness. He found that without Sarah, his acting fell into a slump again. His gaze became unfocused, his emotional outbursts seemed forced, and even the skills he had mastered became obscure and difficult to manage. He tried to recapture the feelings Sarah had given him, but he was like a blind man who had lost his cane, fumbling in the dark, unable to move forward. Without Sarah's eyes that could see into people's hearts, no one could precisely point out the core of his acting problems. No one could touch the softest and most vulnerable corners of his heart. He even started to lose control during rehearsals, yelling at the air and throwing things. His agent, Brenda, also noticed something was wrong. "Ethan, what's with you? Your condition has slipped again." Ethan irritably ran his hands through his hair. "I don't know. I just feel. I can't find that feeling anymore." Brenda frowned. She also sensed Ethan's anxiety and powerlessness, but she would never admit how important Sarah's presence had been. "You just need a break. Go on a vacation." But Ethan knew this wasn't something a vacation could fix. He started to suffer from insomnia at night, his mind replaying Sarah's words and the image of her clear, insightful eyes. He remembered the coolness of her fingers touching his wrist, the scent of her when she whispered near his ear, the raw yet soul-piercing tremor of her kiss. He finally realized that Sarah's irreplaceability wasn't just in her ability, but in her power to awaken his deepest and purest passion and perception for acting. He had lost her like a painter loses his eyes, a poet loses his soul. He began to feel regret, a regret that grew like a vine in his heart, coiling around him and choking him. He opened his phone, tapped on Sarah's profile, but didn't send a message. He knew his past cowardice and betrayal had hurt that clean and resilient girl from the small town. How could he possibly win her back? Sarah took her vacation and returned to her hometown in Oklahoma. Her grandmother said, "Child, grass has a way of living, and flowers have a way of living. As long as the root is still there, it can always sprout again." Sprout again, Sarah murmured to herself. Her ability was still there, her insight into human nature was still there. That was her real root. She began to organize her thoughts. The faces of all kinds of people flashed in her mind, their micro-expressions, their eyes, and the hidden desires and fears she had seen. She found that she could distinguish who was a true gem and who was just an empty shell. She didn't act immediately but chose to lie low. She started going to the library every day, reading numerous psychology books and observing all kinds of people. She used her ability to test the theories in the books and to analyze real human nature. She found that her ability gave her a deeper and more direct understanding of human nature than any book theory could. She began to transform her insight into a systematic methodology, a power that could help others and herself. She was no longer just a script supervisor who could see into people's hearts. She began to try to shape hearts. She turned her attention to newcomers who, like her, were buried at the bottom but longed to be seen. They might not have connections or fame, but she could see the purest passion for their dreams and the authenticity honed by life's struggles in the depths of their eyes. She began to proactively contact some young actors who had just debuted or were still playing minor roles. The first one she found was a boy named Leo, who sang on the streets. His voice was clear, but his eyes held an out-of-place stubbornness and melancholy. Sarah saw his almost fanatical love for music in his heart and the accumulated frustration from countless setbacks. "Leo, do you want to sing on a real stage?" she asked, standing in front of him, her voice clear and firm. Leo looked up at her, his eyes guarded and slightly impatient. "Who are you?" "I'm Sarah." She looked at the hidden longing in his eyes, her voice with a calming power. "I can help you stand on a real stage and sing for everyone." Leo laughed, a hint of sarcasm in his smile. "How can you?" Sarah didn't say much. She just looked at him quietly and then hit the nail on the head, pointing out his acting flaws and the escape from the past hidden in his singing. Leo's smile froze. He stared at her in shock, as if he had seen a ghost. How do you know?" "Because I can see." Sarah's eyes were clear, with an undeniable confidence. "Your singing has power, but your control of emotions is not quite there yet. You only know how to release pain, but not how to restrain it, how to leave a deeper, more lasting impact after the outburst. It's like a punch thrown with too much force. It's strong but lacks staying power. Leo was completely shaken by her words. He had never met anyone who could see through all his pretenses and shortcomings with a single glance. He decided to follow Sarah and take a gamble. Sarah began to guide Leo step by step. She taught him how to express emotion with his eyes, how to enhance his appeal with body language, and how to pour his deepest fears and desires into his singing and acting. Her fingertips lightly touched his Adam's apple to feel the vibration of his voice, her gaze fixed on his eyes to guide him in releasing his suppressed emotions. This intimacy, pure and full of power, was different from the forbidden temptation between her and Ethan, but it touched the soul just the same. With Sarah's help, Leo's singing became more and more narrative, and his performance became more and more moving. He participated in a TV talent show, won every round, and ultimately became an overnight sensation. Then came the second, the third. Sarah, with her unique ability and deep insight into human nature, successfully created several new actors and singers with different styles. She was no longer just Ethan's mastermind, she became the real super agent in the hearts of these newcomers. Her name began to spread quietly in the entertainment industry, and with the dazzling light of her new stars, she began to carve out her own place. Her office moved from a cramped rental apartment to a spacious, bright office building. Her phone was no longer silent, but rang non-stop every day. The menial tasks Brenda had forced her to do were now handled by dedicated assistants. She was like a poplar tree struggling to survive in the desert, finally finding a water source and beginning to flourish. She still retained the simplicity and groundedness of a person from a small town. She didn't like to show off or socialize, putting all her energy into discovering and nurturing new talent. She knew the dangers of the entertainment industry and the complexity of human nature, so she became more cautious and stronger. Ethan's situation, however, grew worse. Without Sarah's guidance, he was like a puppet without a soul. His acting was hollow, and his emotions were out of control. But the longing for Sarah in his heart grew like a wild weed, coiling around him and keeping him awake at night. He began to secretly follow news about her, watching her nurtured talents become famous one by one, watching her transform from an unknown script supervisor into a super agent. He felt a complex mix of feelings, jealousy and self-reproach, but more so an inexpressible pride and loss. Pride in her ability to grow independently, and loss that she was no longer his. He tried to ask Brenda about her, but Brenda's face would just turn cold and she would say, "She's not someone we can afford to hire anymore." Finally, he could no longer bear this inner torment. He heard that Sarah would be attending a private art exhibition for a new artist, an artist she had recently signed and was actively promoting. He knew this was his chance, a chance to face her based solely on his own determination, without relying on anyone else. When he arrived at the exhibition, there weren't many people, and the atmosphere was quiet and elegant. Sarah was wearing a beige trench coat, her hair casually tied up. She was standing in front of an abstract painting, talking softly with the artist next to her. Her profile was particularly focused and composed in the soft light. There was no longer the youthful naivety she once had, but a quiet confidence gained from experience. The aura she exuded was that of a woman who truly had control of her own destiny. Ethan watched her from a distance, a complex emotion welling up in his heart. He felt proud of her growth and transformation, but also a sense of panic he had never felt before, like something he had lost and was now finding again. He walked over slowly, each step feeling as if he were walking on cotton, with extreme caution. He felt his palms sweating and his throat tightening. He used to be the arrogant superstar, but at this moment, in front of this not-so-tall girl from a small town, he felt an unprecedented awkwardness and humility. Sarah sensed a movement beside her and turned her head. Her gaze casually swept over him and then suddenly stopped. A hint of surprise flashed in her eyes, but it quickly returned to calmness. That calmness held a trace of wariness and a detachment that made Ethan's heart sink. "Ethan." Sarah's voice was flat, without any ripple, as if she no longer had any feelings for him. Ethan felt his throat go dry. He saw the wariness in her eyes, and deeper, the unhealed scar that he had caused. He knew this wasn't something a few apologies could fix. "Sarah," he began hoarsely, his voice trembling involuntarily. I came to find you." Sarah didn't speak, just watched him quietly, her eyes so clear they seemed to reflect his current pathetic state. She saw the fatigue and sincerity in his eyes, as well as the long-suppressed longing for her. More importantly, she saw the complete self-loathing and inescapable regret in his heart. "I regret it, Sarah. Losing you was like losing half of my life." This naked sincerity made Sarah's heart tremble slightly. She knew his regret now wasn't just because of his career problems, but because he realized he had lost the most important part of his life. "I heard about your career. I'm very happy for you." Ethan awkwardly rubbed his hands. His former halo seemed so dim in front of her now. I apologize for my cowardice. At that time, I cared too much about my reputation and status and pushed you away." He took a deep breath, his eyes burning as he looked at her. "I've found that without you, my acting is just an empty shell. I can't find my soul. I need you, Sarah." He held out his hand, palm up, with an unprecedented humility and plea. "Sarah, come back. I need you. My career, my soul, cannot be without you." His hand trembled slightly in the air, like a sinner waiting for judgment. Sarah looked at his outstretched hand, her gaze on his palm lines. She saw deep within his palm's intricate lines, a coiling dependence on her, a longing for her, and a deep regret for what he had missed. Her heart was a jumble of emotions, like a spilled spice bottle, sweet, sour, bitter, spicy, all rushing into her heart at once. She didn't answer immediately, but gently placed her hand into his warm palm. In that moment, something seemed to reconnect between them. Ethan's eyes lit up, the dead silence instantly shattered, replaced by an ecstatic relief. He held her hand tightly. The warmth of his palm conveyed a silent promise and his long-suppressed, surging emotions. Returning to Ethan's team, Sarah was no longer an unknown script supervisor. She stood by his side as a super agent. Although Brenda was resentful, faced with Ethan's persistence and Sarah's current status, she had no choice but to compromise. Their intimacy became more intense and complex after they reunited. Every private rehearsal and guidance session was not just a professional exchange but an ultimate collision of souls and bodies. Ethan would throw the script to her, his tone commanding yet seductive. "Sarah, come here. Look at this part of mine. What's wrong with it?" Sarah walked up, feeling the heat radiating from his body. She sat beside him, watching him with focused attention. Her fingertips lightly touched his cheek, guiding him to release suppressed anger. Her fingers gently massaged his tight throat, reminding him how to use his voice. Every overlapping breath, every deep exchange of gazes, was accompanied by an indescribable attraction and understanding. "Ethan, the anger here can't just stay on your face." Sarah's voice was a little hoarse. Her fingertips followed his tense jawline, slowly sliding to his neck, feeling the tension in his muscles. "This anger should seep into your bones, your blood, making every pore scream silently." She could see the fire she had ignited deep in his eyes, not just the passion for acting, but also the longing for her body and her soul. His gaze was hot and heavy, falling on her face, her lips, with unconcealed possessiveness. "Scream," Ethan murmured. His hand suddenly reached up and took Sarah's hand from his neck. His fingers were long and strong, with a rough warmth, gently caressing her wrist. "Sarah," his voice was incredibly hoarse, a lustful whisper. "Do you know how much I want to mold you into my bones every time you touch me like this?" Sarah's cheeks instantly flushed. She saw the surging desire in his heart, like an awakened beast, ready to break free from its cage at any moment. Her heart pounded like a drum, yet she couldn't resist the gravitational pull of his gaze. "Ethan, this is for," she tried to explain but was cut off by Ethan. He suddenly stood up and pulled Sarah into his arms. His arms circled her waist tightly, pressing her close to him. She could feel the heat of his body and his pounding heart against her chest. His breathing became rapid and heavy, a thick scent of male hormones completely consuming her. "For acting and also for me," he whispered, his voice thick with desire. His lips pressed down heavily on hers, with a kind of predatory and deep longing. It was a wilder, deeper kiss than the last one. His lips and tongue played with hers, with an aggressive quality that also made her feel an indescribable surrender. She responded instinctively, every cell in her body screaming for him. His hand slid from her waist, moved up, and gently caressed her back, and the numbing sensation made her whole body tremble. "Sarah, you're so wicked," he whispered hoarsely in her ear, with a mix of painful and joyous lust. "You pulled me out of hell, only to push me into the abyss of your desire." She felt his hot breath on her earlobe, and the numbness made her body go soft. Her fingers tightly gripped the collar of his shirt, her fingertips sinking into his skin. She could see his heart now, completely naked, filled with an ultimate possessiveness and a feverish love and lust for her. He longed to become one with her, not just in body, but in soul. This intimacy was a taboo in the entertainment industry, a product of power and emotion intertwined. Between them, there were no more pretenses, no more worries, only the most primal desire and the deepest understanding. She used her insight to delve into his soul, and he used all that he was to respond to her every touch, every guidance. It was the fusion of the behind-the-scenes and the front stage, an exchange and sublimation of power. Sarah, with her own strength and deep insight into human nature, successfully created several new actors, gradually becoming a famous super agent in the industry. Her name was no longer just an appendage to Ethan's, but was closely linked to the term star maker. She even founded her own management company, transforming from an outcast script supervisor into a significant figure in the entertainment industry. Ethan publicly acknowledged Sarah's help. He made up for his past cowardice with sincerity and courage. His comeback brought his career back to its peak, and this time with Sarah's support, his radiance was even more brilliant and lasting. He was no longer the superstar who had succumbed to alcohol and self-destruction. He became more restrained and mature, his eyes now filled with dependence and deep affection for Sarah. Sarah, through Ethan's connections, gradually built her own entertainment empire. She expanded her company, signed more promising new talent, and even ventured into film and television production. Her vision was unique, her judgment was precise, and she used her ability to rewrite her own destiny. She was still the girl from the small town, not tall but with a clean face and honest eyes. But her eyes were now deeper, carrying a quiet confidence gained from facing life's storms. And Ethan, by her side, also became more authentic and complete. They were each other's salvation and each other's accomplishment.